They'll be calling you a radical. This is Nate's funeral procession. He was murdered. This is important. So was George Floyd murdered. So was Nate murdered. You got to quit dividing up. The flag waving heroism's got to stop in this country. As you know, the Million Mass March, we've been protesting the bad killer cops for years. Nate wasn't a bad cop. Nate was a good guy. There's bad cops. Oh yeah, a lot of them in this town. A lot of them all over, but there's a lot of good ones too. Most are good. So murder's murder. I knew Nate from his days at Weber State. He's a local great guy. He was murdered. He was murdered. Just like Mr. Floyd, George Floyd was murdered. Murder is murder. This whole mentality that we're going to divide up, cops versus so-called civilians. My grandson, we went to the protest down here. There was a small group that protested. We were in Ogden. I'll post them both. But he says, "Grandpa, I got one." I said, "What?" "Black, brown, white should all have equal rights." Problem is they don't. It's class warfare, but we need to wake up. I very much support this. Support Nate, but I very much support every single protester as far as the murder of Mr. Floyd. There's been a lot of murders here at the hands of cops. He was murdered by a white boy, Coleman, punk ass. And the sad thing is, adult probation and parole knew he was bad news. Why'd they send Nate in like that by himself? They shut him right through the gut. You know, should have never happened, by the way. Young guy like that. So, just want to make sure that I'll cry. When's this country going to wake the fuck up and realize this isn't cop versus so-called black, brown, white? This is bad cop. Nate wasn't a bad cop. Nate was a good cop. Bad cops that murdered Mr. Floyd, there's lots of them. That was a pure murder. Just like Nate's was a pure murder. This isn't cop versus division. This shouldn't be a division. We should be all united. This place is corrupt. Ogden I call Blood, Utah. You know, Matthew Stewart was, hung in a jail cell here, and when the last other cop that got killed in 2012 here, he was shot by another cop's bullet. Over a marijuana plant, the SWAT team raided that house. Should have never happened. Cost several people their lives. Ask Dub Lawrence, peace officer. So, it's heartbreaking, actually. What happened to Nate? There's bad cops in this town. Do not get yourself... Oh, yeah, lots of them. But there's more good ones. The field's changing. Where was everybody when we started not Black Lives Matter, which evolved from the Million Mass March in 2013. That's where Black Lives Matter in Ferguson. When all this happened, it's taken a long time, but the field's shifting. They didn't support us then when we were going after jail the killer cops. Remember that? Jail the killer cops? We were going after them hard. These cops need to clean it up from inside. This punk that freaking murdered Nate, well, he got murdered. He got executed. The SWAT team killed him. What about the guys who murdered Mr. Floyd? Think they're going to get executed? Judge, jury, executioner. We need to wake up and realize, and I'll put up the videos. I'm down there right on the corner, right down the street, right there on the corner, with the Young Ogden High. We're protesting. Hands up, don't shoot. I'll post them simultaneously because I want people to understand. The Post-Ignorance Project, the Million Mass March, is about corruption. Murder is murder. On both sides. Mr. Floyd was murdered. Nate was murdered. Now, the murderer of Nate got his dues, didn't he? What about all the other ones? By the way, there's a big protest going on in Australia right now for the abuse of indigenous people. You want to talk a race that is discriminated against? Oh yeah, I mean hundreds of years. The brown being exploited so hard in this town in Ogden by car salesmen calling themselves contractors. What about the Native Americans? Oh, I'll show you abuse. So I want to make sure I support them both. I came out for this specifically today because I want people to realize, oh, I'm a radical. And I hate corruption inside this. This place is so corrupt. Weber County is the most corrupt place in the world, but I sure support Nate. I had a hunch I'd know with him when I heard it was a young cop. He's one of ours, not a cop. No, he's an Ogden boy, like me, born and raised here. He went to Mount Fort Junior High. He went to Ogden High. He's one of ours. He's one of the good guys. Just like Mr. Floyd was in Minneapolis, Minnesota, he's one of theirs. Quit dividing up. Murder is murder. And people got to quit paradism and heroism. You know, I support this.
See you.
I got a hunch it's going to go on for miles. But, you know, so-called law enforcement, I hate that word. Law enforcement, no, that's legislators, that's judges. These should be peace officers. You know, they need to wake up with inside and clean up their own departments. And boys, anybody needs one cleaned up, it's here. Weber County. These police departments need cleaned up. You know, and this whole mentality, look what we created. We created a monster in this country. You know, cop versus civilian, cop versus black, cop versus brown, cop versus the underprivileged class warfare. No, it's bullshit. Should have been cleaned up a long time ago. Again, George Floyd was murdered by a cop. Nate didn't do it. Nate was a good cop. And don't get me wrong, there's plenty of bad cops in this town. But one of the good cops is going to say, hey, we're not dealing with this. We're part of this community. This is our town too. Let this keep running. I'll post both these videos. You know, because I protested right down the street with the Ogden High kids. Peaceful, very peaceful. I support all protesters. I don't support those guys, the DNR. They're bad news. Really bad. What they've done to our environment here. Boise. What's your name? Notice how many undercover cops. Oh yeah. Those are the guys that are dangerous. So-called SWAT teams. No knock warrants. They need to end. These judges need to be cleaned up. What do you think led to Nate's murder? The adult probation and parole that didn't do their jobs. They knew this guy was bad news. They knew he was trouble. You know, a call comes in, they've got access, they see it. I mean, the APP guy was with him. I mean, why did they send him in like that? They knew how much trouble this dude was. Send in the young guy. Should have never happened. I think all law enforcement needs to take a hard look in the face. Well, Americana does. America does. Yeah, it's a church in the background. Where's the church leaders on all this? This country is so viciously violent. It's nuts in their gun culture. I like how somebody said the other day, we need to get rid of these cop shows. Fuck, I've been saying that for 20 fucking years. Like I said, I support Black Lives Matters 100%. I'm one of the original founders of it. John Anthony Fairhurst, Steve Grant, myself, and the group of us, you know, we formed the Million Mass March. Remember when Larry Schwab used to say, jail the killer cops? Yeah. I mean, it should have been cleaned up long ago with inside police departments. But I sure support Nate. Fantastic young guy. Very young. What a turnout, huh? Someday we'll wake up in this country. Someday. Someday we'll wake up in this country. Realize this is not so-called law enforcement versus their citizens. It's outrageous. Let's keep it going.
What are you doing up?
Video on this paradism. We're all members of this society. How's it going? By the way, just so you know the exploitation that goes on in this town. In Utah, by the way, we have a major COVID-19 outbreak. Guess where it's at? In the meatpacking plants. And they just tore down the Swift building right down the road, which was a union meatpackers. And they moved them to Bear River, up there, Tremont area, and Smithfield, Utah. And it's all illegal labor. They don't care. You know, the exploitation of labor in this country. I was a contractor in this town for decades. They gutted me. And they started allowing people to exploit. The exploitation. You know. Keep it going. Needs to be cleaned up from within. We'll be protesting again down the street on Tuesday. We're peaceful. And it's all young kids. It's all 18, 19-year-olds, 15, 9-year-olds, 10-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 6-year-olds were at that protest. You know, not a lot of us. This beautiful, diverse city that we live in, Utah, Ogden. It's not Salt Lake. This is Ogden. We have black, we have brown, lots of Asian, lots of every kind of nationality you could dream of. Rich, poor, gay, straight, you name it, we have it. Anybody should be protesting. It should be this fucking town. What we've allowed to happen here is disgraceful. Like I said, I support Black Lives Matter 100%. I support all protesters, all of them. Keep Ogden sketchy. Well, I call Ogden blood. You know, this city is rooted in blood. Stockton, there you go. Stockton's very similar to Ogden. Whoa, whoa. Manage, I know where that's at. Gotta stop the heroism. Gotta stop the flag waving. Where's it going? Guy told me the other day, he says, God, you couldn't believe this turnout. 200 freaking cops here. I says, oh yeah, you seen the George Floyd turnout? Worldwide? Probably a couple 100 million. Keep it going. This country needs to wake up. Realize this is not a football game. These aren't teams. Cops should be peace officers. Ask Doug Lawrence, not law enforcement. Judge, jury, execution. Watch too much TV, I think. Yeah. Eber. Community intelligence unit. Oh, okay. All right. You think we got enough law enforcement in this? Well, cops in this freaking state? Here we go. What's this one? I don't know, just law enforcement. USDA. USDA. Oh, okay. Okay. Law enforcement. Yeah. I was just talking about the meat cutters. They don't police it. Swift, they just tore down Swift, but this used to be a union freaking meat cutting town, #1 in the world, right here, Ogden, Utah. You know, the great Junction City, the great stockyards. They just tore down the Swift building, and we've got the COVID outbreak inside the meat cutting plant. They closed it. They broke the backs of the working class. It's class warfare. Should we cut it off? See, the undercover cop cars, that's the ones that's disturbing to me. What the? How much of do we have? This isn't that big of a town. Of course, these guys from all over, I get that, but law enforcement's got way out of control post 9/11. Jail the killer cops? Oh, hell yes. Should have happened a long time ago, but Nate was a good guy. So you can't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Good cop, bad cop, plenty of bad ones, but Nate was a good cop. Good guy. Young. Nice person. Isn't that the way it goes? They didn't send in one of the old freaking assholes, did they? Cultures change, the fields change. Here we go, man. Bringing up the rear. Highway patrol. Police volunteer. Okay. I support Nate, but I 100% support all protesters, all of them. Antonio, love you. Hey, rest in peace, brother.